y'all gave us a really nice present last Christmas in form of a equipment grant for GBKS. And in return, I'd like to give you a little tour of some of Germany Valley. There's a lot of cave there, and I have a lot of slides, but I don't have it anywhere near everything. There's whole caves I'm not even going to talk about. And I would like to extend an invitation to any of you that would like to come to Germany Valley and go caving to do so. We're going to be there in 2 days on Saturday. It's usually pretty vertical, but it doesn't have to be. You can do surface digs and things like that, but most of the real caving is pretty technical, as you'll see. Anyway, I called this a potential megasystem because we have a lot of miles of cave in the valley. Some of it's connected, some of it's not, but if it ever all connects, it really will be huge. This is the overlook of Germany Valley on US 33 before you get there. And they even advertise caves by the county, telling you where a hellhole is as if you could go there. And Schoolhouse, which has been locked forever. So let's look at Hellhole. Hellhole's been known for a long, long time, and it was one of the very first caves that the NSS ever worked on, I think in 1939 or something like that. And before that, some locals had been lowered down on a rope, but not really cavers. And so historically, Hellhole was only known about the entrance room and so forth. And then after cavers started going there, it got bigger, and then it got bigger, and then it got closed. Because right after this incredible discovery, there was an accident. Bob Anderson broke his leg in there, and the passage is called Bob's Big Break Borehole, which is obviously a double entendre, but it closed the cave. And then Gordon Brace managed to get a project going with the quarry that leases the entrance. So from 2002 to 2007, we had trips almost every weekend from May to September, which is when we were allowed to go because the bats weren't hibernating. And as you can see, it went from 8 miles to 28 miles, which is not bad for 5 or 6 years worth of work. But then after that, the project basically came to an end, I think partly because Gordon got tired of doing it, and the cave became off limits again. So we were pretty bummed because we had some fantastic leads. So we worked hard to connect Shovel Eater Cave, which we did in 2010 through a very long dig, really grim, and have since increased the mileage from 28 miles to 42 miles. So there was a lot left to do, and there are still things left to do. So the stuff in green here is what's been added in the last, really in the last 9 years, because we didn't break through until 2010. So nothing happened in 7, 8, and 9. So let's go look at the cave. Oops. Did I hit the wrong button? Yeah, oops. Sorry. So this is where the entrance to Hellhole is. It's just right off the side of a road in Germany Valley, although you can't really see it if you don't know it's there. And the cave had been locked for a long time. In fact, they couldn't even find the key. So there's the universal key. And a little local warning. And there's a steep sinkhole. It's got 3 holes in the bottom, and it's about 150, 160 foot drop to the bottom. So you would definitely not want to try to do this without a rope. And somebody sometime in the past put these really nice logs there with some bolts and so forth, and so it's an easy place to tie your rope off. We often rig 2 ropes just because it takes people quite a while to get in and out of the entrance. And you come down into this really nice big room. Some of these slides are very old, some are newer. This is one of the side entrances. Normally we use the center entrance because it's the nicest free drop. However, it also had an unstable rock in it, and so the last couple times we've gone for bat counts, we've actually used the side entrance. And some of you have probably seen a couple of these pictures. There are a couple of famous ones of a sunbeam coming down into the entrance room of Hellhole. I think Brian Masley took this picture. Sort of like Beam Me Up, Scotty. And there's some interesting stuff down there. A lot of debris gets washed in. In the wintertime, it's full of ice. So this is a little bit about the old part of Hellhole, or as Gordon Brace says, your father's hell was just a side passage. And this goes to places you may have heard of if you know the cave, called the Ship Room. And some other spots that I haven't been there, so I can't really tell you anything about this part of the cave. But as you can see, it's got some nice passage and some nice formations. And this is a really cool breakdown block because it's right at the contact with the dark limestone and a light limestone, and obviously when the block fell off, it flipped upside down. It's just pretty cool. And some interesting formations. Hellhole doesn't have a lot of formations most places, but it has some very nice formations in a few places. And lots of big stuff. Then in when was it, Bonnie, the flood?
85?
Yeah.
85, there was a huge flood and it blew out a mud plug and opened up all that section there in red in the north part of the cave, which no one had known anything about until that happened. And I haven't been there either, but it looks like it's a little precarious to get to. And it also has vertical drops and crawlways. In many ways, it's like a lot of the cave, but it has nice passage. Some neat fossils in Germany Valley. Some neat ceilings. Lots of breakdown. That passage on the left doesn't go, but it sure looks good. And some interesting geology. Nice thing about caves is you get to see geology from the inside out. So here's a nice drag fold. And some really weird formations. Not sure what that is. And the northern extension. And one reason this got pushed was the quarry, which is basically surrounding the cave on two sides, is prevented from intersecting the cave because of the endangered species that live in the cave. And so they have to be very careful where they dig that they don't breach the cave. And one of the agreements we had with them for the project was that we would concentrate on the north and western sections first, because that's where they were in danger of getting too close. So there was a lot of effort put into pushing these areas. And we do bolt climbs. In fact, one of the reasons we got the grant is to buy equipment. Bolt climbing and vertical caving in general are fairly gear intensive, which gets to be pretty expensive. I'll show you this afterwards. In there somewhere. And found some pretty nice passage out that way. Gypsum needles. There's a lot of gypsum in certain places in Hellhole. It doesn't exist all over, but they're really nice displays in a few places. You'll see some more of it in a little while. It's a pretty nice passage. If anybody wants to say anything about some of these places, speak up, because I haven't been there, so I can't give you any personal descriptions or anything. These are from slideshows of various people's pictures. Many of these are not mine. In fact, most of these are not mine.
Is it wet or dry in there or what?
It's wet or dry, depending on where you go. It's been wetter than usual lately, but normally most of the cave is pretty dry. There's one main stream passage at the bottom, which we'll see more of later, and you do get wet either to your knees or your waist at normal water in there, but otherwise it's mostly dry. So this is the southern extension, which is really where all the big stuff happened. And this was the way that was dug into the main southern extension out of one of the historic rooms. Right inside the entrance is the bat room. We go there every 2 or 3 years to count bats, and it's all breakdown on the floor, but there's a lot of air. And I don't remember when, maybe you know, Bonnie or Bob, when they dug through?
72.
70?
No, that was, 72 was the dig that went to the ship room in that area, and then
Okay.
it was in the early 90s, I think they dug into the blob.
Well, it goes to the 90-foot drop. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
forth.
when, just before the cave closed again,
Mhm.
because this was the way to the discovery of Bob's big break
Right.
borehole.
But anyway, it's kind of a tight breakdown squeeze, but it led to grand things. And just beyond that, the passage opens up really big. And there's some drops, really nice passage, and some really interesting formations. These are directional halictites. And a lot of times you'll find a little group of these things along the wall, and they all point the same way, which probably tells you something about the airflow. Go to the west, John. And this is actually stacked crystals that are growing on the end of a stalactite, which I haven't seen anything quite like that. And they're also all pointing in the same direction. And we do a lot of bolt climbs. Back in the old days, which this is an example of, bolt climbing was pretty strenuous work. It was hand-driven bolts, and we didn't have a lot of the fancy adjustable daisies and so forth, and we didn't have good lights, so you couldn't really tell whether it was worth climbing or not. But we still did a few climbs and found some pretty good passage as a result, and I'll show you more about that later. Nowadays, bolt climbing has become almost trivial, both because we can see what we're doing and we have lithium-powered battery drills, which are much lighter, and so putting in a bolt is really not an issue. So much so that, at least in Shovel Eater, which I'll show you some of later, virtually every dome in the cave has been climbed, to often very good effect. This is some anthrites and some nice passage. This is a mystic dome, big dome that you pass under. It's got a rope hanging down it. I don't know if you can see the rope.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there it is, right on the right-hand edge.
How tall is that one?
Like 140, I think. And it wasn't scaled from the bottom up. That previous bolt climb I showed a picture of Gordon on the wall, got up to a passage which intersected it partway out. And as usual, lots of breakdown and lots of big passage. This is Bob's Big Break borehole, which was another dig and really opened up possibilities going south. And here's some interesting rigging, Tyrolean. Lots of surveying, trying to survey everything kind of as we go. Of course, we don't go with tape anymore. Love that Visto X.
Yes.
Since we all need to be aware of accidents, how did he break his leg, you know?
I was in '96, I think, and I don't know how he broke his leg. Do you, Bob?
He just stepped
Yeah,
off.
he only fell about 3 feet. He was climbing up a rock and slid down it and landed wrong on his leg, and it fractured his lower leg.
He was a big runner and probably had micro breaks, so his bones already that facilitated the break.
That's what the story I heard as well. He had just finished a marathon that couple days before, and he did have, like what Bonnie said, the micro fractures in his legs, and he just stepped on it wrong and it broke.
Yeah.
There's
And
some
he
slick
self-rescued
insides.
himself for quite a bit.
He self-rescued,
yeah.
but there was still a big zoo at the entrance, and therefore it closed the cave.
Yeah, that was too bad because
Yeah.
they had just found this fantastic borehole. This is a slick inside. Like I said, you get to see geology from the inside out when you're caving, and this is the slip plane from a fall. And a lot of massive calcite in the walls. A lot of times calcite seems to fill in cracks and so forth. There's another fold. Nice passage. I think that's the 100-foot room.
Yeah.
And then from the south, we had 2 or 3 different parallel levels of development. So far, almost everything you've seen is upper level stuff. There's no flowing water. There may be little incoming streams and pools, but there's no actual river. But we knew there was one down there somewhere. There's a big spring that the cave resurges to right behind the quarry, Judy Spring. So one of the bolt climbs that was done led to the passages in red. It was actually just a very tall dirt slope. It was like a huge passage that was 3/4 full of dirt and rocks. And, but it took a bolt climb up the wall there to get up to this passage. And it was pretty nice up there. Big stuff going in more than one direction. We have a few places in the cave that have very bright orange and yellow and red formations, presumably due to iron. And we still have good leads at the end of this passage, which we have never gotten back to and cannot currently explore. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And another bolt climb. So this climb is the Southwest Dome. I think it was one of the first of the big domes that got climbed. That's Yvonne and Bill Stone starting out on this climb. And pretty much straight up. And at least he had a drill, but it wasn't a modern drill. It was an old NiCad battery drill, so much larger and heavier. And the batteries didn't last nearly as long as they do in the current lithium drills. But it led to a 256
276.
foot high dome, which at the time was, I think, maybe the second deepest drop in West Virginia. It's now slipped back to like fifth or something because of so many other domes that have been climbed in Germany Valley. Anyway, these are just general passage pictures going down the Southwest Express and a tiny
You
trunk.
can see the erosion passage there, just a few footprints.
Yep.
Survey as you go, so.
There's Gordon taking notes. Be reading instruments on rope. It's right on the edge of the drop. Nice rimstone dams. But again, you notice it's all dry. To climb some of these domes, they set up camps. This is Bill Stone, I think, at the Batman Dome camp.
Yeah.
Which was the second big dome that was climbed out in that part of the cave. Takes a lot of equipment to climb domes, or to climb anything really, when you're doing it by bolting. So in addition to your drill and your bolts, you've got all these pieces of hardware and ropes and so forth. As you can see, gear management can be an issue. Anyway, you just keep going up until you get there. And a lot of times on these tall domes, the climb is longer than your belay rope. So you'll set up an intermediate belay station partway up the drop. In this case, Bonnie's just sitting on a little natural bridge. How high?
Oh, it was about 100 and some feet up, but the problem was there is that you could just even barely sit on there. There was like one 4-inch by 6-inch place where I could put one leg on. The rest was just like a knife edge. And so I was just hanging from that rope up there, but I was able to kind of at least sit, rest on that one, and then I had to constantly switch over, you know.
As you can
And
see,
it
she
was
was also
raining
in
on
the drip.
I was gonna say, it looked like she was getting wet.
So she's wearing a plastic
A
bag.
plastic bag, and I was just delaying, but you know,
You can't move.
yeah,
You know,
I
you're
had to be
there.
there for a long time.
Looking up the dome.
But yeah, you could see that little ledge down there.
Yeah.
You can't quite see that it's a knife edge, but it's a knife edge, believe me. You can barely stand on there.
And then finally, it got to be to where there was no good place for an intermediate belay, so they brought in a portaledge, which is similar to what big wall climbers use. You just put bolts in the wall and suspend this ledge so you have some place to sit.
That was about 200 feet up. So you had like 200 feet of void below you. It was really cool being there.
Then a little higher up, there was a natural ledge, so that became the next.
That's just about 20 feet from the end of it. It's 306 feet up.
Then there was a passage at the top, which only Yvonne has seen and is still a lead. So someday somebody will get back there.
The rope is still there?
Yes, but you cannot trust it because on the way down, I had to wrap it around a little rock and just to help me get back down to that bolt there. But it's not attached to anything, so on the way up, you can't trust going up into it.
So you have to free climb at the
You
top of
have
the
to
300 foot
reclimb the
drop.
way I did it originally.
Or maybe take some more bolts.
Yeah.
But when I was down climbing back down to the bolt, you know, there was this 300 feet of nothing down there, and I needed to reach that bolt down there. So I took that little tail of rope and wrapped it around something, the only thing I could find, just to give me a little reassurance or something. Anyway, so you can't trust it.
But there it is, 300 footer. I think that was the first 300 footer in West Virginia.
Climb from the bottom up.
Well, or not. I mean, there just aren't any others.
Right.
And then the other major south trending passage is Silent Stream. And so I said there was an active stream in the cave. Silent Stream is the active flowing river that drains all of Germany Valley, basically. And it also has lots of nice big passage. This is the lowest part of the cave. And it has lots of side leads. But as you saw from the line plot, the cave is pretty linear. It just has a lot of spaghetti around the edges, but it doesn't really branch off much in the southern section, not like it does up around the entrance.
How far below entrance?
The bottom of the cave's about 650 feet, a couple hundred meters.
What's the travel time?
Well, it depends a lot on where you're going, but if you were to go in the natural entrance and go to the southern end of the cave, you'd probably be looking at 6-8 hours one way travel time. We do everything from cave camps. Even before we had the shovel leader entrance, we were still basically doing cave camps.
That means you travel about 4 hours, and then from there you can go explore and then come back to that camp. And then the last day you go out, those 4 hours you go back out.
That's a contact.
That's very Horner, isn't it?
Yes.
That's Barry Horner. Back when he was a caver. And there's a lake. You don't get many lakes in Germany Valley.
That's
This is
divine.
a real lake. They even took a boat. The boat was a problem, so made a Tyrolean instead. Don't fall off. Some interesting climbing techniques.
That's Bob right here.
I believe that's Terry McLennan.
That's
Oh.
not me.
Oh, it's not
I have
you.
looks
He's
like
got
that.
blue jeans on, that's
Okay.
Terry.
That is a point of contact.
Did Terry do the 300-footer?
Yes, he's
He
done
went up
all
to
the
the
big
top
domes.
Just to measure it. He did not go
Yes,
up
that's
into
his
the
deal.
That's his
extension.
deal, yeah. But there's some very nice passage down there. And we finally got across a natural fracture zone that had stopped the cave. You notice how that southwest express branch just stopped. And that had been the limit of the cave for a long time until somebody finally got down and found this very sumpy passage, which is in fact sump some of the time, but is open at low water, anywhere from knee deep to neck deep, and sometimes not accessible at all. But this led to the main southern extension of the cave.
What's interesting about that stream there, it's underneath the lake that he
The
just
upper
showed
lake.
you. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's a perched lake. Sometimes it
Yeah.
happens that
There's the Von going through in relatively high water. But on the other side, it opens right up, and it's pretty nice. That's Stonehenge. It's a natural collapse that's just bridged across the passage. And we established a camp in there in 2007 because it was getting to be very long trips, a lot of 20-hour trips, and pretty grim having to go through that thing and get wet both ways, in and out. So we finally bit the bullet and decided to set up a camp in there. And this was right near the end of the expeditions that we were going to have at the end of 2007. So this was like the last chance to really make it go. And we did some surveying and we putted around, but I wanted to do this climb. The main passage had been explored to a sump at the bottom and a huge wall of breakdown. And there was so much spray and so forth, you couldn't really tell if there was airflow or not. You didn't know if that was a terminal collapse and a real sump or if it was just a breakdown pile of water coming out of it. So finally, I think on the second to the last day of the camp, we actually finally got out there to do the bolt climb. And I climbed it along with Yuri Schwartz. Actually, Yuri Schwartz did most of the climbing. He's a Russian guy, now lives in Sweden, but used to cave here a lot. And got up to the top, and there was a stream passage, clean washed, unlike any other part of Hellhole. No breakdown, no mud. It was amazing. And so we were overjoyed, and we said, well, we got to go see if it goes somewhere, even though we weren't surveying, and we wouldn't be back to survey that trip. So we went what we thought was about 300 feet, which the later surveyors discovered was about 600 feet, until we came to a deep pool of water, and we didn't want to get wet, so we turned around at that point. There's some really interesting stuff in there. There are all these calcite veins, and this is like a cracked open geode with dogtooth spar on the inside of the calcite crevice. And this is that pool that turned us back. Later we had a day trip. The last trip in Hellhole before it was closed. At the end of the 2007 project season, Bob Alderson and Mark Stover and I did a 22-hour trip from the natural entrance as far as we could go. And it took us, I think, 4 or 5 hours to get to the lead. And then we surveyed until we figured we better stop and turn around or we wouldn't make it out. And then we had 4 or 5 hours more to go out of the cave. There's some interesting geology again. A lot of these contacts you see in the cave where it's black rock meeting white rock. And we had done our survey, we got a piece of flagging and we said, "Welcome to Hellhole." And we hung it on a wall and we figured, well, someday somebody's going to come downstream in this passage and they're going to see this piece of flagging. And we were packing up our stuff and we could hear this. We said, "What the hell?" We went up the passage a little further and there was this little cascade. We said, "Oh, cascade, wait a minute." So we just ran down the passage and we came to this incredible waterfall. It's not a very good picture. I don't know if anybody has a very good picture of it, but we called it Last Falls. And so that was another scoop that just got left for 3 years because nobody could go back in the cave. So that was the lead that we had at the end of Hellhole in 2007. Then nothing happened for 3 years, although 2 of those 3 years were spent digging this incredible 500-foot-long canyon. It was too tight, but descending with airflow, headed right for Hellhole from Shovel Eater Cave. And finally, after the 2 years of digging, it connected in to Hellhole, and we had access to the cave now without going through the quarry and the locked entrance and so forth. And we sort of made a deal with the quarry and with the wildlife people that we wouldn't go north of that low sumpy spot that I showed pictures of earlier, because that's a periodic sump and there are no bats south of there in the cave. So we figured we're not going to hurt the bats and we're not going to mess with anything up in that section, so we'll just concentrate down south. And it's been pretty productive, as you can see. Joy Canyon is what we named that new stream passage that we got to by climbing up at the end of the cave. And that's been where all of the recent work, as you can see, this is a few little spotty things that were done, back toward that low airspace area. Yeah.
Do you have, what's the base camp?
Diggers Hall?
Diggers Hall. Where's Diggers Hall on the map and the TARDIS stuff that Jeff's working in? Whereabouts?
I don't
would
know
that be?
exactly where Diggers Hall is, but it's kind of like right
More or
here.
less.
And I think that's the TARDIS.
Okay.
That looks like, I'm pretty far away. That kind of looks like the line plots I've been looking at.
So even with the new entrance that we have through Shovel Eater, it's still not a practical thing to go on a day trip and do any real work. Some people do tourist day trips, but if you really want to do stuff, you pretty much have to camp in the cave. This is another picture in Joy Canyon at low water, and there's some big passage in there. Almost right away at the top of that bolt climb, you're in the stream passage, but you can look up and you can see there's black voids up there. And this part of the cave, almost the entire way along, has a big abandoned upper level and a smaller, lower active stream level. And this is the abandoned upper level that's right above the water where that guy was standing in the last picture. So they're really all one passage. That's on the bottom, and you see that blackness up above, and that's up on top.
And it continues upwards to,
Yeah, even that,
much.
there are places where you can climb. And this is Diggers Hall, which was actually first accessed when somebody climbed up, Aaron Moses, climbed up through breakdown from that Last Falls waterfall. It came out in the bottom of this room. And then later, we found other ways to get to it. Nobody does it that way anymore. And that big passage in the previous picture heads right into this passage. And so this became our camp spot. We camp up here on this ledge. It's a really nice camp. It's dry. It's got running water now because Aaron climbed up a dome and attached a bucket with a piece of tubing on it and brought the tubing down to camp. So now we have actually constant flowing water in our camp. Otherwise, it'd be a long way down to the active stream. It's just a really comfortable camp. There's the camp. It's not real wide. But there's a lot of stuff going on from this in various directions. So it's really centrally located, very nice place.
And I see exactly where I sleep from that
Yeah. there's Jeff's bed right there.
I see mine as well.
I can see my bag stashed behind the rock.
The dome ended up being about 135 feet, And then there was a really tight passage at the top, which Bob Alderson finally managed to get through. It's interesting trying to dig at the top of a 130-foot drop. I was pushing on his boots, and he's trying to go uphill in a mud slot. But at the top of that was another dome, which we still haven't gotten to the top of. That's Katie Graham from Canada, who came down for a trip one time. And you can see this is sort of the typical way a bolt climber looks. They've got all this stuff hanging off of them so that they can reach whatever it is they need and put it in next. Of course, you're secure. You're not hanging on by your fingernails. You're actually attached to the bolt in the wall. And of course, sometimes there's not much place to rest. In this case, there was a tiny little ledge, and we had 4 people, and there wasn't room for all of us. So we had 1 person climbing, 2 people on the ledge, and I just sort of relaxed on the rope. And after Katie was done, I went up, and that's the current state of that lead. You can see something really big up there, but we haven't been back because we've been distracted by other things. So that's a lead if anybody wants to go climb in there. This is continuing on in Ecstasy Avenue. This is one of the few passages that has a lot of gypsum. All sorts of gypsum, little puffball-like things and needles and crystals. The 0 room. This is another place where the fill has been removed. It's really classic subway tunnel borehole. And then it turns into a crawlway, but it's completely covered with gypsum. The whole thing is white. So we have marked a little trail through the middle so we don't trash any more of it than absolutely necessary. Just recently, Ryan Maurer went in there, who's a pretty good photographer, and took pictures of some of the formations. Some flowers. And at the end of that passage, there's a lot of breakdown. And we were looking around, trying to figure out where to go. And Bob and I went off one way, and Bonnie went off down the other way, and she goes down this breakdown slope. She looks out, and this is what she sees. She yells back, "Think you better come down here." And it was this huge reverberating room, which we called Perseverance Hall. Really, really nice lead. And we had time to survey up to the top, but that was as far as we could get that trip, so we had to come back on another trip. And there were holes in the ceiling and places we wanted to rig, so this is a little bit out of sequence, but actually one of the holes was right in the middle of the big room, in the ceiling. So it was a long way to the nearest wall. And we had thought about this lead for years, and basically ever since we found it. And finally, after doing lots of bolt climbs, we felt like we were ready to give it a try, which meant you were going to have to go up the wall and bolt across the ceiling to get to this hole. And then as we were looking for the best place to start, we actually found a way to get up onto a ledge. It saved us a lot of work. And Nathan Canaris is an up-and-coming caver. He said, "I really want to do that climb. Can I do it? Can I do it?" Because I was going to do it. And I said, "Sure, go ahead. You can have it." So he did this climb. There he is, traversing across the ceiling 50 feet off the floor. And there he is he's now over the edge and up into that dome. And he was so happy he came down and he said, "That is the coolest thing I've ever done underground." And it really looked cool to see him up there, especially de-rigging the climb. Because when you're trying to take a climb down and you've got tension on the bolts, you know, you unscrew that bolt, you know you're going to fly. And you get that bolt off and off you go. You got to have good confidence in your equipment and be sure that the quick draw didn't come back and pop you in the eye.
And it happened to me once.
This was at the end of the big room. This is Perseverance Dome, which is a dome you've probably heard about. And the funny thing about Survey As You Go, we got to the top of this big breakdown room, and we could see it going off down the other way, and we said, "Wow, this has got to be the best lead I have ever left in a cave." So we just turned around and left. We came back the next trip. We went down the slope maybe 100 feet, and there was a big pit. We had no rope. We had no idea there would be a pit up there because there hadn't been a pit for the last, mile of passage. So we had to turn around, go all the way back to camp, get our vertical gear, get a rope, go all the way back out there so we could go down this little drop. You intersect the dome about 50 feet off the floor, and it just goes up into blackness. And we couldn't even tell how high it was because there was little water droplets, and every time we shined the disco up there, we'd get a different reading. We'd hit some water drop. So we had no idea, but it was big. And that was an intriguing lead for a couple of years. And Aaron Moses finally started climbing it. This is the same pit, but we were coming in from this way, and now we have a traverse line around the edge. But the dome is right here. I don't have any pictures of the climb. But Aaron Moses started it, and then Derek Bristol and Peter Johnson, who used to be a caver out here in the east, now lives in Colorado. They made 3 or 4 trips to climb Perseverance Dome, and it ended up being 526 feet tall. It's by far the tallest drop in West Virginia, and it was all climbed from the bottom.
26.
One time when Derek came back to camp, they were up, I don't know, 350 feet or something, and he said, "Still can't see the top. Gonna need more bolts." So,
I mean, it's
This
just
was a-
Perseverance is the second tallest dome pit. Second, I mean, I guess in the North America.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
second
might
to
be.
Where does that
Ellison's,
rank?
isn't it?
in what?
Like,
It's in the, it's in the top 3.
It's
What's,
way up there in terms
it's
of drops.
fantastic is 800.
No,
Five or six.
586 is
586.
fantastic.
It's
Yeah.
like the 3rd or 4th deepest
Yeah.
drop in the east, at least.
Yes.
There's a couple deep ones up in Canada,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's way up there. There was unfortunately no passage at the top. And we asked Ralph Hartley one time. We said, "Well, Ralph, how much rock is there? How high could it be before we
Right, what's the
tell?"
overburden?
And he said 800.
From the top, from the top
From
of
the top of the dome,
Yeah,
it's
it could
800
have
feet
been.
up.
No, from the bottom, it could have been 800 feet
Oh, it
high.
could have been
but
800.
Topped out at 530 basically. So this is a slide I made a while back talking about bolt climbing in Germany Valley and how productive it's been. Well, at the time that I made this slide, the hellhole was 33 miles long, and 9 miles of that were accessed by bolt climbing. And these colored things are the passages that were only found because of bolt climbs. Today, hellhole is 42 miles long, and about 19 miles of that are due to bolt climbs, mostly because they're all off at the end of this. So it's now up to about 50% of known hellhole is only known because of bolt climbs. So Shovel Eater Cave, I was talking about our second entrance, is Shovel Eater Cave. Not very impressive, just a little hole in the ground with a lid on it. And the lid is there to, keep animals and small dogs from falling in there, children. And we have a little hole cut in the top, which is roughly the same size as the original hole that was blowing air, to try to keep the airflow the same and let the bats fly in and out and so forth. And almost right away in Shovel Eater Cave, you're on rope. There's like 6 ropes in a row that everybody who goes in the cave does, because that's where the cave actually opens out and starts to go somewhere.
Just one minute.
This is the first real pit called Acrobat Drop. And this is another one further down. Somebody's setting a bolt for a redirect.
It looks like pipeless.
Yeah, it's pipeless.
Okay.
This pit has an interesting history. It was a really crumbly, kind of nasty drop, and we didn't really trust this big-ass boulder that was hanging over the edge. So one of the schemes to fix it was to put a pipe braced against the wall out to where you could get a free drop. Well, that worked for about a year until the pipe rusted because they just used plain old hardware store water pipe. And so finally, I think maybe Harmon and some other people went in and they decided to get rid of the boulder. And so they got rid of the boulder, but that made the drop even worse to do. So finally we have a decent system now with a redirect so that you can go down the edge, get out away from the crumbly stuff and go straight down. It's not a very big drop, but it's a little bit of a pain in the ass.
So it was called the pit with the pipe first.
Yeah, first it was,
something else before. And then it was a pipeless pit
Pipeless
because there's no pipe anymore.
Yeah, I
And
forgot
now
to
it's a
give the
redirect
punchline.
drop.
And then below that, there's another little drop, which is kind of neatly rigged as a little Y-hang. And you can actually step across the drop like this to rig in and then just go on down. And at the bottom of that drop, the cave goes in 2 directions. It goes off in the old historic route, and it goes down another couple of little climbs to a dig. And that dig was amazing. It was only done because of the survey. It was just a little dead-end dome, like any other dead-end dome you see, has a little sprinkle of water going down and just a flat gravel floor. Absolutely no indication of passage, no airflow, no nothing. But it plotted up right over the main borehole at the bottom of the cave, and the distance was only like 20 or 30 feet of overburden. So Jason Glancy from Ohio led a multi-trip digging effort and dug through the breakdown, and sure enough popped out in the center of this borehole passage. And Bonnie and I were actually in there on our way to a survey when all of a sudden all this brown water and rock came crashing through the top of the dome. And when we got back, he had hung up a piece of flagging and says, "The Ohio bypass is open for business." And it cuts off a lot of time, and it's vertically much more efficient than the old way of going all the way down and then back up to get to the same area.
How much time would that have saved, or did that save?
It probably
Two
saves
hours?
at least 30 minutes each way on a
Well,
trip.
or more, because all those obstacles were
But it's,
kind of
it's
difficult.
yeah, it's vertically way more efficient because you used to go up, and then down, and then
Yes.
back up. Now you just go from the same level down to where you want to be, and you're off. So it saves a whole lot, and everybody basically uses that unless they just want to do the old tour or do a loop route. And anyway, this is the way up to the old part of the cave. Down to the right was the Ohio bypass, and this is the side pit, Patrick's Pit. There's a little bit of passage in the area. This is sort of typical. There's a lot of small canyons. There's a lot of nice passage, but there's a lot of really small stuff. Tight canyons. We work on a lot of tight canyons, enlarging them, hoping that we'll find something like Silent Stream at the other end. This is the Anderson Traverse with Bob Alderson on it. It's a way to a known part of the cave. It's basically a bottomless canyon, so you're chimneying along on little ledges and so forth at the top. The balcony room, you come out up here, and you're looking out at this big canyon we call Harper Canyon. There's Dwight Livingston being a cowboy surveyor. This is the cathedral window which led to Germany Well. Germany Well is the deepest drop in West Virginia that was actually found from the top as opposed to bolting up from the bottom. It's a 200+ foot drop that re-intersects a known cave at the bottom. Most people don't go this way on a work trip because of the time involved to climb it. So most people take the alternate route, which is 3 shorter drops, or 4 shorter drops. Like I said, we push a lot of tight canyons. This was the beginning of the connection crawl to Hellhole, the way it looked before anything had been done to modify it. And it was basically like this for 500 feet. So it was a pretty big effort. There's Dave Riggs at a rebelay. We have a lot of rebelays. Shellwater is probably the most technically rigged compact piece of cave in Germany Valley. It's got just about everything. J-hang, rebelay, redirect, rolling traverse. Anything you might want to do on rope, you can do in there. This is another part of Harper Canyon. And one of the leads that we had that other people had seen too is this big canyon just ends at a wall of breakdown. And you couldn't really tell whether the breakdown went all the way to the ceiling or not. Just from the angle, the breakdown was sloping up and the ceiling was coming back. And you could easily imagine it was just breakdown up to the ceiling. But finally we went in one day to climb it. And it turned out to be a pretty easy climb. I climbed it, and Yvonne and Bill Stone belayed. And at the top, wrong way. At the top, it went into a big section of passage. And this is sort of typically what bolt climbing involves. You have slings that you stand in, slings that you attach to the wall. You have bolts that you put in the wall. You have quick draws, which are these, which hold the rope away from the wall, so when your belayer is belaying, the rope can pass fairly freely to you and doesn't get too much friction against the walls and going around corners and so forth. That's all kind of heavy stuff. There's a bunch of the stuff. Keeping it clean is a problem. And of course, you have a belayer just in case something happens. Bonnie does lots of belaying, for which I'm very thankful. And of course, it doesn't do any good at the bottom, because if the first bolt breaks, you're going to crash. But as soon as you're up a couple, if something happens, a bolt breaks, the bolt pops out of the wall, the rock's no good, you will hopefully be caught by the connections below you. Anyway, this is what was at the top of the bolt climb. So when I got up there, Bonnie and Bill were saying, "Well, does it go?" And I said, "Borehole!" And sure enough, it was spectacular. It more than doubled the length of the cave. So that's an example of why you should do bolt climbs. This is a big room we found, which we called Hellhole Hall, because we were very optimistic that we were just going to charge down this thing and connect into the other end of Southwest Express. They're kind of heading toward each other like that. Well, it didn't happen that way, but we were excited and hopeful. The acoustic persistence chamber, which has one of the nicest formations. That's a shield stuck onto a bunch of stalagmites, and it's got a really nice echo in there. It also has very unusual formation, several of these drip circles, where a drop of water falls down, but either the drop breaks up, which I think is the current theory, or it hits the bottom and the splashes come out in a perfect circle around the drip hole. Now, the end of that passage turned out to be another big drop in some very nice formations we call Rubicon Hall. And for a while, we couldn't go there because it was going to breach the property line where we had permission to be. And nobody wanted to, possibly be trespassing under the neighboring land. So for about a year, we couldn't go back to Rubicon Hall. But it was a really nice looking lead. And it had some vertical things to do, a little traverse we did. Actually took a grappling hook for that, because I could see this hole in the wall on the other side of the dome, and I could actually see water flowing down the back wall through that hole, like I was looking at a waterfall that was hidden behind the wall. So I traversed across and threw the grappling hook into the hole, and sure enough, we found some more stuff. There was a 100-foot drop over there, but it just reconnected into the known part of the cave. There's Bill Stone sketching, body reading instruments. So that first trip turned out to be about an 18-hour trip, and we got back to the field house, and we left our notes on the table. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, everybody was asleep. So we went to bed. We figured they're going to see the survey book. Well, in the meantime, somebody got up in the morning and put a big box of stuff on top of our survey book. So everybody went off to the gateway and went off and did whatever they wanted to do, and we slept in. So we got up, nobody was there. So finally in the evening, the next day, when everybody's back at the field house, they saw it. Why didn't you tell us? It's, well, we left the book on the table. You know what you want. And so they just couldn't believe that nobody knew about it until the next day.
Because they could have gone surveying.
Because they could have gone surveying in there.
But they didn't.
Anyway, there's some really deep formations. And lots more climbs to be done. This was John Harmon's first little climb. And I'd say it was pretty successful. It led to the West Virginia extension, West Virginia University he was at the time. We also occasionally have to do digs. We were in that big new discovery, and it just suddenly slammed down this little crawlway, which had lots of nice airflow. But I didn't have anything to dig with except my pliers. So I opened up my pliers, and I used the pliers handle to dig out the dirt to get through this. And right on the other side was a natural bridge, which we don't have a whole lot of, at least not big ones like that. And some really cool old remnants of flowstone that are all perforated. And lots more climbs to do. This is sort of a typical surveyor in hellhole or shovel leader back, maybe 5 years ago, where they've got their pack, their rope, their vertical gear. You just wear your vertical gear all the time. You don't take it off unless you know you're going to be spending hours digging somewhere. And of course, he had a tape, now he'd have a disto. And we have some traverses. This is a passage that's got about a 50-foot pit, but where we want to go is straight across. And we used to go down one side and up the other. And finally I got tired of that, and I said, well, let's just bolt across the side of it. So now you just can clip in, kind of walk along the wall and go right across the pit. This was another interesting, terrible picture, but interesting climb along the ceiling above a 200-foot pit. And you can see passage on the other side. And there's just enough of the wall there to get your toes on, but basically bolted across the ceiling. And unfortunately, the passage on the other side just dropped back into known cave. But we still have that traverse up there, and people still do it just for sort of the thrill of hanging out on the ceiling of the 200-foot drop. And you can do the 200-foot drop, which is what that rope there is. This was a very tight drop, and I just wanted to show this as an example of one thing you can do. When you got your vertical gear on, you've got your main beaner, and you've got everything attached right here, which makes you fat in the middle. So if it's really tight and you want to make yourself as thin as possible, you take everything off of the center and you put your rack on a short cow's tail. So your rack's up here, it's not down here, and you can work with your rack. And then when we climb, we put our croll on the end of the short cow's tail. So it was up there. So we never had, stuff right at the waist that we had to squeeze through the tight spot. Fortunately, that didn't go. I don't remember where that is. Another typical place. This is Papusha. This is a really nice 110-foot drop. We're still going there, digging at the canyon at the bottom of this passage. But also, we've done traverses. We traversed around the left wall, we traversed around the right wall, where you can see right here. We found quite a bit more cave by doing traverses around the edge of this pit. That was during the traverse of the pit. what's going on there. And that's a really strange formation. It comes out of a hole in the ceiling. That's the end of the shovel leader part. So for shovel leader, we've done probably more climbs than most of the other caves. So the red part was what was known, and all the other colors are due to bolt climbs. And so the original breakout climb was this one, but then from it we did other climbs, which also led to more passage even beyond that. Yes, Stephen?
Could you put your finger on the entrance, please?
That's what the E is.
Okay, there it is.
So the entrance is directly above this main borehole down here, but to get there, you swirl around, you go over here, you go down, you come back. So it's, even though it's straight above there, it's not a direct route down. So almost 70% of what's known in shovel leader is directly the result of bolt climbing. Again, that's an old figure, but it hasn't changed a whole lot. The cave's about 6 miles long now. And it's a little more obvious in the vertical. This is a profile view of shovel leader with the entrance and the old bottom part. This is the connection to hellhole. And all of this stuff in other colors is what we've found as a result of doing various bolt climbs. And like I said, we've climbed essentially every dome in the cave. So now a dome is just another lead, like that. It doesn't go anywhere, but what the heck? You never know till you go. So Memorial Day Cave is the other big cave in the valley. Shovel leader and hellhole are connected, and together are about 42 miles long. Memorial Day Cave is 27?
Yeah, 28.03.
28 miles long and not connected, but it's close. And we just don't seem to be able to break through. So it also has a relatively unimpressive entrance. It's dug open. It's got a barrel on top. And it's got, right away, it's got a really nasty squeeze called the puppet buster.
It takes you a bit to get there, though, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a bottomless keyhole, basically. And it opens right out into the side of a 125-foot drop. So it's a lovely place.
Let's keep Hoffman.
Yeah.
Okay, Terry McClanahan would disagree with you. It's 119.5.
Oh, he doesn't think it's a 125?
No, he checked it out twice.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a misnomer.
Yes, that's the only pit that has a misnomered name,
Yeah, so
and the name is the
affectionately known as.
You know why
the
it's
distant.
different height, right? With Terry McClanahan always starts from the foot below. That's
Yeah.
why the 200.
No, he starts from the bolt.
From the rigging. I
From the
guess.
rigging bolt, the Y, that's where he started, that's where he did his measurement and where it
From
lands.
where he stands on.
But it does go up, right?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Go about 10, 15 feet up.
Is that a free drop?
Yeah, more or less. It's wall touchy,
Yeah.
not for much.
There's a belay in the middle and some boulders
Just
on
to
the
protect
edge.
the road?
Yeah,
It's not like you're not hanging out in space,
No.
but it's pretty vertical.
yeah. To get from the entrance to that keyhole slot, the puppet buster, takes you about an hour of decent travel. We've gotten it down to about 25 minutes.
I was gonna say, I thought 30 minutes was more.
A
Usually.
new group.
And at the bottom of that drop, occasionally, there's a lake. Not always, but they were surprised the first time there was a lake, so now they keep a boat there.
I was on the other side of that lake when we showed up.
Oh, yeah.
The boat's still there.
And the lake has been seen 3 or 4 times, right?
4.
4 times?
Yep.
So fortunately, it's not always there.
And it goes down pretty fast.
Yes.
Didn't you have to
And
swim
this
it
is
the first
Columbia
time?
Canyon.
Yes. Correct.
Which is the main passage at the bottom of this named 125. Very nice passage. Almost everybody who goes in the cave goes this way. You can go the other way, and some more bolt climbing was done down there. It did open up a new section that eventually connected to another entrance.
Ruddle?
Ruddle. But most of the cave and what people mostly do nowadays is out this way.
Everything's been done at the other end.
Yeah,
They've bolted everything. and done
including the
everything.
through trip.
Yep.
Um, you want to talk about this? You know more about it than I do. I
Oh.
think this is the Titanic room or the
No.
Pinnacle room.
No.
No?
It's still in Columbia
Still
Canyon.
Columbia Canyon? Okay,
Yeah.
I got a couple pictures of that. Well, that's John Harmon doing
Yeah.
another bolt climb.
There's a couple ball climbs on the side of Columbia Canyon. That is the base camp. That's today's base camp. That was the first base camp trip. They had a huge group.
That's Yvonne.
Yeah,
Bill
and
Stone.
and Andy Hunter and Robert Monster.
I think Memorial Day Cave is the only one of the
Yes,
caves
it
which is routinely explored from a camp. We use
Yes.
camps when we go to the back of Hellhole, but not in shuttle leaders. But almost every trip in Memorial Day Cave is run from this camp. And it only takes 2.5, 3 hours to get to
3
the
hours.
camp if you know where you're going and you're pretty good at it.
If you're pretty good at it, it takes you 2 hours. If not, it takes you 3.
And it's
Or
got
it
the
takes
usual
an hour and a
mix.
half.
It's got tight stuff. It's got nice passages. It's got formations.
Miles.
Miles Drake used to go cave.
Yep. He did a lot of stuff like that. That was my first survey trip with Miles.
Maybe is this the Pinnacle Room?
Yes.
Nice big room, not very far from camp.
No. Camp overlooks Pinnacle Room for the most part. Or the latrine overlooks Pinnacle Room.
The latrine.
Yes.
And this is where a lot of the current work is being done
Who in the view?
up in the ceiling of this area.
Yes,
Right?
correct.
Yeah.
In the Titanic room.
So-
Or that's the Pinnacle Room, I believe. From floor to ceiling is well over 100 feet.
There's a
And
lot
the
of-
room, the length of the room is right around 1,000 from
It's
top
a
to
very
bottom.
impressive room, I must say.
It's big.
Very impressive. And it's got a lot of formations too. Again, most of Memorial Day Cave is dry. There isn't really a mainstream passage in there.
Correct.
For that popcorn.
Bob Zimmerman.
Yeah.
And you know who that is? Ralph Hartley.
Yeah.
That's a nice tubular passage.
That's right outside of base camp.
That's headed
Interesting
towards Gypsum Sand.
striation. I don't know if you can see this very well, but there's these lines, like scratches in the ceiling. I guess they're little tiny fractures. But kind of unusual to see so many at once. Is that the gypsum sand borehole?
Yes.
This is sort of classic Germany Valley passage. Most of the caves have passage that looks like this somewhere. Kimball Pit is another cave I'm not even going to talk about. They recently had a major breakthrough in there, and they've now got 7 or 8 miles of passage that was all found by digging in a cave that was known for a long, long time, but no one had found the way on.
There was nothing at the bottom.
Yeah, that's because the way on was in the side. There's another traverse,
And you had to dig that.
and this is, you can tell me, I don't know.
I'm not exactly sure where.
I just grabbed some photos because I don't have many of the cave.
There's Victoria.
Yeah, there's Rick.
There's Dwight doing a radio location.
Okay, then that's towards the northern section of the cave.
Pretty cool drip holes.
That's cool.
And the usual tight canyons. And another big dome. This is way out at the eastern edge of the cave, the Flying Dutchman.
Yeah.
And it took several trips to get to the top. And again, unfortunately, there was no passage at the top. But it's also just over 300 feet.
350 something? That was
It's like 306 or
306?
No, it was 1 foot less than the
1 foot less than Batman was 306, it's 305.
We're
Or,
disappointed. 'cause
something like that. But another major effort, and this one was so far from the entrance, it was a long haul out there.
From base camp, it takes you another 7 hours to get there. 5 hours to get
So
there.
that's a 10-hour trip, even if you just go there and come back.
Yes.
Not to mention bolt climbing your way straight up for 300 feet.
Yes, we've done that twice.
We got swindled by Pete Penzer to pick up some of this gear.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
you guys should view the hairball. Can you drop by the Dutchman to get some?
Strong your line. So this is also out of date, it was only 20 miles, but about 50% of Memorial Day Cave is only known due to bolt climbing. This is Flad, this is the southern extension off Columbia Canyon. I don't know what that
This
is.
is gypsum sand borehole. This is the hairball. This is the train tunnel, which goes down to the Flying Dutchman.
Flying Dutchman, FD, right.
This is the Pinnacle Room, Titanic Room. There's the Z Lake, which is over here. We did the line plot, all this good jazz. Found the big lake. Landowner wanted easier access to water, so we figured if he could skirt that and get into a good water source. Well, they missed, judged it, and they have a well casing that dropped in to the side of it. So there's, I think, 40 or 50 feet of well casing in that Z Lake now.
Yeah.
They moved it north another 100 feet, and he's got a bunch of water in there.
It's always good for landowner relations when you can give them a well.
This is
We've done it before.
What's the overburden?
the over.
Like where the.
This is the
casing-
Pinnacle Room. This is going north. The Russian Lake is in this general area, and it's only 75 feet of overburden
Oh, wow.
from
There.
our known ceiling to the surface. So it's relatively close.
And how long to get to that area?
From base camp to that area is about an hour. That's towards the Pink Belly Crawl, right before
So
the
putting
Pink
an
Belly
entrance
Crawl.
there, drilling a hole, putting an entrance wouldn't be that,
Probably
It's feasible.
wouldn't be that useful though, right?
right, it wouldn't
No.
be useful.
No, we do keep
In emergency rescue situations,
Right.
yes, that has been one of our plans, is to put in that hole there. And we could potentially have a 6-inch hole done in about 48 hours for that area to the supply base camp, which is about a
Like the-
half-hour, 45-minute trip back and forth.
Well, one of the things about this,
Brimstone Express, you don't have any pictures of that. That's
no.
that leads to the north where they're going to be working this weekend.
yeah, they have a really great lead going downstream off
Dragon
the
Canyon.
end of the map. So this could really grow to the north.
Yep.
It's probably one of the best leads.
And
in
to
the
get
cave.
from base camp to there is about 5 hours of
Yeah.
canyon crawl and
Not an easy trip.
4,
They're talking
3
about
more
another
trips.
camp.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Where's Hellhole from there?
Yeah, do you have a line plot of,
Over here.
I don't have them all. Well, I do have something I'll show you later that shows everything.
It's
But
down here.
this is where everybody thought the connection was going to happen. When this passage was found and it just shot due east toward Hellhole, we all went, yeah, there it is. And then bam, it just stopped. And we can't find anything in either cave that goes between them.
I think they did some, as a crow flies between here and Hellhole was only 1,000 feet or
Yeah,
something.
about 1,000 feet. And there is a cave in the middle that we opened up called
Yeah.
Warner Noisy Blower.
Right here, right? At the end of the
No, it's
flag.
actually, yeah, right, it's off the edge of Flat.
So
It's like,
down-
it's out there. It's only 135 feet from the end of Flat to Warner Blower at the closest point.
Yep. Is it deep enough? Is Warner Blower deep enough?
Oh, yeah, they're about the same level. Well, that part of it. Warner Blower is 400 and something feet deep. That's an interesting story. That cave was found when people were ridge walking in the winter, and it was just a tiny little hole, but it was blowing air so hard it whistled, like when you blow over a pop bottle. And they were ridge walking, they heard this. Looked around and they found this little hole shooting warm air out. Dug it open, and now we got a 400-foot deep cave, and it's right between Hellhole and Memorial Day. And we thought sure that was going to be the key to it, but the unfortunate thing about Warner Blower is it's 400-foot breakdown pile. There's no real passage in there. It's like ants in a jar of gravel. And so every rock has air coming out of it on every side. So everything is a lead. You don't know where to go. You don't know what to dig. There's some really scary looking breakdown in there. There's a place we call the train wreck, which is sort of boxcar sized boulders stacked up on top of each other. There's one place, the only time I've ever seen this in a cave, there are 2 big boulders that obviously pivoted like that because there are concentric grooves on the lower one where the top rock went like that. There's another passage in there, which we didn't realize at first, had a very flat ceiling with slicking sides. And then we started noticing that the left wall and the right wall were an exact match. And it's like the whole wall just went, moved over and left us this nice little 2-foot wide crawlway. So it's a pretty tectonically active place. And we really need to go back in there and work on it some more. But we don't have a great lead. We're just, digging in breakdown, basically, trying to find something that goes. But here's the overall. Somebody asked for an overall map. That maybe is a little bit hard to see. But this is an aerial view, Google Earth type view of Germany Valley. This is Memorial Day Cave down here. This is Hellhole. This is Shovel Eater, connects to Hellhole right there. Lots of other little caves. Schoolhouse, which isn't all that long, but we had a project there to resurvey it years ago. The resurgence here is Judy Spring. And then Kimball Pit, which I mentioned, which was just known as a drop for years. A few years ago, they dug it open, and they now have 7 or 8 miles and still going passage in there. And the interesting thing about that is it's the farthest north cave of any consequence. And there's some more of these major fracture lines across here, so we don't really think it's likely that it could connect, but it looks like obviously geologically it's related. But the reason I say you might be looking at America's next 70-mile long cave system, you got 28 miles here, you got 42 miles there, that's 70 without any interconnecting passage, and they're so close. So I think one day it will happen.
How long is Kimball's today?
Kimball's like, I don't remember, 7 or 8.
I thought it was in the 8s.
It might be in
Middle
the
8s.
Can you show the quarry and how the cave is going around the quarry?
The quarry's right here, all this white scar. So
And
you
can
can
they go south any?
Can they do
Can they
what?
go south with the
It
quarry?
gets too deep.
Yeah, the limestone plunges toward the cave, so that sort of helps us a little bit.
Uh-huh.
But you can see here why they were really concerned. There's the quarry, and here's the ship room, and the old western section is right on the edge of the quarry. And then they wanted to come out this way, and so that's why this was top priority, to find out where they might go to the north.
Mark,
Well, they broke it in the cave and covered it up.
They've
Is that
broken into
rumor,
a
or-
couple small caves
They do that.
that they've admitted to, and they even asked Gordon to come out one time and look at it because they were so afraid that they, might do something wrong. And he said, how ironic, the quarry actually asked me if they could go mining instead of me asking them if I could go caving. But he said, no, this cave is in some shit rock upper layer and there's nothing there, you can have it. And so they mined through it. But whether or not they've actually intersected Hellhole, hard to say. If they did, they probably did it right there.
How long has that quarry been in operation?
I have no idea. Anybody have any idea?
Dad might know that one. How long has the quarry been in operation?
well, they were working there when I first went in '64, so they had been there since about 55, maybe even 50.
Yeah, that's 55 years.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say, Mark, is that they're after a specific
Pure,
band of limestone.
pure limestone.
Yes.
And
New Market.
yeah, and it kind of disappears in some places and pops up from others.
Right.
So where Hellhole is, down at the very base of Hellhole is where the New Market kind of starts.
Right.
So
That's why I
that's
said
100,
it's getting deep.
175, 180 foot there.
So
The limestone.
there's a lot of New Market limestone out here, but it's so deep that they couldn't really quarry it from the surface. If they're going to
No,
go after
yeah,
that, they're
it's
going to
about
have to
400
do
feet.
hard rock mining.
See, that's where we were running into problems, is that we couldn't get through the first 150 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And the only place that we did get through there was at Hellhole. And then on farther up at Kimball Pit, I've been down at Kimball Pit before, and there wasn't nothing down there.
Uh-huh.
And if it wasn't for the fact, I think they went up a little bit
Right.
and,
They went
and
through the
went
side.
in.
And we have New Market in various places in Shovel Eater also. So
Yeah,
it is
but you gotta go
possible.
down so far. What, you got 4 different layers
Oh, at least.
in that darn,
At least.
different limestone layers.
But like I said, I didn't take even most of these pictures. We have lots and lots of photographers involved over lots and lots of years. That's why some of them look pretty old. And that's the end for now, but we're going this weekend, so things might change.